only comparisons I ever get is Dion Dublin, circa 90, well, circa anything really, post Sash.
How's your how do you go around houses selling them?
Yeah, with the stairs up to the bathroom. I just walk around my house going, "There's the stairs up to the bathroom."
Yeah. I look like Dion Dublin, the estate agent years.
Stairs up to the bathroom. He's off his head, isn't he, with that? In mad though, Dion Dublin, right? The career he's had, like, it's amazing when you think about it. Like, this was like play for England, play for United, Villa and all the rest of it. Invented a musical instrument.
The tube. How can you forget?
The tube. That's what I mean. Yeah. Like, and then presents Homes Under the Hammer. Mm. It's like 5 careers into one. It's fucking mental. And he seems like he's quite a nice guy as well. Got a lot of time.
Speaks to me and a Spurs fan from Ghana on African TV in his spare time. Yeah. True story.
That must have been the highlight of his career.
Yeah. Hey, he mentions that on his Wikipedia page, actually, James. Career highs.
It's his Twitter bio.
Yeah. One star on Ghanaian TV.
What's it? On TV. Mate, you know what I mean? Come on.
I actually met Dion Dublin when he signed for United. Remember Our Price? You remember?
Yeah, record shop.
Yeah, so remember where Wimpy was on Market Street in town?
Fucking amazing. This is proper early 90s tackle, isn't it? Wimpy and Our Price. Yeah, I do remember.
He just signed for United and he was in there buying, I think it was a Cypress Hill CD in Our Price. And I remember he had a Chicago Bulls hat on, wore proper cool. But yeah, he was lovely bloke and all that. Had time to talk to me and stuff. And
that was cool.
Obviously his United career, wasn't very good, but he went on and did some decent stuff at Villa, didn't he? Afterwards,
yeah, he's unlucky when
Coventry as well.
He broke his leg, didn't he? Early doors.
Then
he never got over
that. So
exactly, yeah. So once Eric came in, no disrespect to Dion Dublin, but he was never getting back in the team. Then was it?
Manchester's had a few shops like that. They're like sports pages. That's no more, isn't it? As well.
Fucking hell, yeah.
Where's that one?
There's loads.
It was a sports bookshop. Can't remember where it was, but it was like one of the first of its kind to sort of do it, and then obviously the sort of internet came along, sort of killed it. But big for its time, very of its time.
Yeah, cool, man. Could have James knowing the history of Manchester.
James is right. He's a dark horse, James, man. He's 18 going on 80. It's seriously. He knows all sorts, man. He's got an absolute fountain of knowledge.
It's only because I think they owed quite a few people quite a bit of money when they went under.
Sounds about right, doesn't it, Fucking hell. What we're talking about then tonight, gentlemen?
Well, there's a load of shit going on, so should we do an introduction? I am Scotty, that's Motty, that's Younger. I think tomorrow we're allowed to be in a group of 6 again, but considering the amount of rules and regulations that's happened over the last 12 months, I haven't got a fucking clue what I'm doing. I'm just playing it by ear. And when I get told off I can't do something, then I'll stop doing it. Pretty much how I've ran my life to date, so I'm not going to deviate away too far away from that path. But obviously there's been protests in Manchester. I was going to work, across the country, but it happened in Manchester yesterday. I was going to work from the BBC radio show yesterday, and I had to get a fucking taxi. So if one of them protesters want to fucking DM me, hun, for the £8 it cost me from Piccadilly train station to Media City, it'd be well appreciated, because they blocked the tram lines and they blocked the roads and all sorts of stuff to get the point across. But so we'll touch on that and whether you think that the right to be protested about the right to protest, I think, which is pretty meta. I think that's what the kids call it nowadays, isn't it, James?
I don't know. Why. You're asking the wrong person, mate.
Asking the wrong teenager.
I don't use that word either.
All right, okay. I'll ask
people say something that's good to say. It's sick.
Yeah. No, I'm not really. That's not. I'm not going to fly with that one.
Right. It is weird though, isn't it? That like all this is going on. Not weird. Weird's probably the wrong word. It's just scary. I think, if I'm being honest. Like the right to protest, especially in Manchester, we're famous for it, aren't we? We've always been willing to protest, whether it's poll tax, whether it's the war in Iraq, whatever. I don't mean just in Manchester. I mean Mancunians and, well, wherever you're from, James, and you're from Manchester. British
I was born in Withenshaw Hospital.
Oh, yeah. Well, to be fair, that's, yeah, you're there. All the best people are born there.
I did live in Manchester, have you know.
Right, okay. Listen, I'm not disparaging or, questioning your Mancunian credentials there. The point I was getting at was, regardless, it's not just a Mancunian thing, it's a British thing that we like to process. But you're right, you're as Mancunian as a hot pot. But I think that this is scary because the protest bill, from what I gather, I've not read it fully, but some of it is nonsensical. I mean, there's talk about in there, is it like annoyance when the noise reaches a certain level, that can be deemed illegal, and this sort of thing about making all these requests. And you have to request when you have to do a demonstration anyway. That's nothing new. I've covered a lot of demonstrations as a reporter, and the council told the police, usually know in advance, that those things aren't a revelation. I think what these laws are, or what this new bill is sort of clamping down on just even the most basic rights of protest. So it's almost like you can have, ask for permission to have a quiet, small protest that doesn't really inconvenience anyone, which is, I'm no, English professor, but isn't that like the opposite of a protest and a demonstration? That the idea is you are protesting, you are sort of making people notice you in a way that is disruptive sometimes. And I don't mean smashing up shops or battering people. I mean, being in the middle of the city centre on a Saturday afternoon. That's the obvious one where we've had, how many of those have we had in our time? Where people, it's just, it's a arranged demonstration that goes on and brings the city centre to a standstill for a couple of hours, but lets everyone know that we're not happy with certain things. So it does worry me a little bit. And I saw some of the footage of the protesters and the way they were treated by the police. And I know that some footage can be selective and you have to be careful with it, but there's no denying that some of the methods used by the police, especially on some of the female protesters, were disgusting. They were. I mean, I saw, and even the press, there's people covering it who were just sort of stood around reporting or filming, who were getting smacked with shields and stuff like that. And you think that this is just getting out of hand. And I think that it's having the sort of opposite effects of what it should. I think the Tories think that by introducing this bill and by sort of bringing in these tougher measures, they're going to be able to control people and control and stop some of these protests. But it's just going to encourage them and in many ways make them more dangerous, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand what you were saying regarding protests, and I'm a little bit skeptic as to how much they work compared to maybe how they used to do. And I think when you're talking about like civil disobedience, I think a lot of that started with Gandhi when he was trying to get independence for India, for the British colonial powers. And I know Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King, but both were sort of, well, not Nelson Mandela, but Martin Luther King on the non-violence front was against any sort of breaking down, shops and shit like that.
But it still used kids, which is very controversial at that time period in the 60s, especially sending in 10, 11-year-old children to basically have water cannons fired at them.
Well, he was using them as like martyrs to sort of to prove a point. Yeah. Wow.
I think though, I mean, you got to look in the context. I mean, you can look at that and go, that's a bit beyond the pale. But Martin Luther King was preaching about civil disobedience and sort of bus boycotts and things like that. When people like Malcolm X and others were trying to get people to sort of almost take up arms. We had a lot of people that were against Martin Luther King, even the black community, like, this isn't enough. We're getting killed, we're getting battered, and you want to just, boycott or sit down or cause disobedience. So it's very difficult with Martin Luther King because some people, I get where you're coming from. People go, well, look at this now, 60 years later, and you go, was that method right? Was this method right? And it was almost an impossible task. We had so many different factions as well. It wasn't just him.
But there's the whole, there's the great man thesis surrounding King as to whether he actually started the civil rights movement, because you had Du Bois, you had Booker T. Washington before that, you had the NAACP, and then King actually, a lot of people say, because of his martyrdom, actually gets a lot more credit than he actually deserves for the whole movement. Yeah,
it's interesting. It's sometimes, like you say, he's seen more of a figurehead. And I think that's okay. I think that's, it's good that what he symbolises rather than just the man. And, listen, he was a fantastic orator. I think that goes hand in hand with it. That's a big part of the pull with Martin Luther King. His speeches have just stood the test of time.
Yeah.
and also the fact that he did put himself in harm's way. He knew he had countless death threats. He knew what happened to many of his peers, and he didn't give up the fight and didn't give up speaking about what he was speaking to. And his last speech is very poignant when he says, I may not get there with you, but I know we as a people will get to the promised land. And the next day, I think it was either later that night, was it James, or the next day he was shot?
Yeah, it's pretty soon after. But like you're saying, I mean, he went to Birmingham jail as well. I mean, he got arrested. So I mean, he put himself in a lot of danger when he went to I think it was Chicago, to sort of deal with other problems as well. So especially, I mean, people like to say that he used non-violent methods, but I mean, he was threatened a lot of times with plenty of other violent things. But it's different ways of going about it. I mean, people always used the suffragette movement to promote violent activism because they were violent, but it depends what way you want to go about achieving things, because I'm not really in favour of any sort of violence if you can avoid it. The IRA, for example, people would say they're a terrorist group. Some would say that they're a political organisation, but I think it's very hard to justify sort of killing people and setting bombs off to get sort of political things.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that. A lot of people say one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. I think is the sort of go-to line on that. But I mean, if people are being civil disobedient and bringing the city to a halt, then I think that's something that, if I agree with what they're protesting for, then I can stand by and understand it. Do you know what I mean? But sometimes it can just become a little bit farcical when you got the likes of the extreme sort of climate change people, Extinction Rebellion, and that just got a little bit farcical regarding what they were doing and shutting down the whole of Deansgate last year. But it does seem quite draconian, some of the measures that they want to bring in at the moment. But I'm not too sure how successful protests are in this day and age. Not to refer to one of the songs. Yeah, well, there you go. That's it's a good
example. That, to be fair,
it's a great example, and you can scream and everything, but then are we powerless anyway? And is protest now just a token gesture?
Do you think that it's a good question, that, because sometimes you think in the past have protests have had an effect. I think sometimes the sort of the part of a bigger picture, you look at the poll tax, which sort of did for Thatcher in a way. The poll tax riots were a part of that, and the protest, they weren't all of it. That wasn't it. It wasn't like you had a protest and that got rid of facts, but it's a little part of it. And it's like sometimes you have protests and it's like, okay, is this part of a bigger movement or whatever that leads to something? And I get why people get angry. And, like when the EDL comes to Manchester, I fully understand why, not them, obviously, but why people, anti-fascist law or other groups go to town to protest against them being here. I get that. And it's sort of, it does make sense. But it's easy to look at it and go, a lot of the time you're going up against governments, you're going up against big corporations, you're going up against things that are entities that are billions and billions of pounds. It all comes down to money, doesn't it? And are they going to change? Is this going to change because, 1,500 students have, gone down Deansgate on a Saturday afternoon? Maybe not, but I think people should always have the right to do that. And I think you should always have the right to be able to say, do you know what? When that went down, we protested against it. We weren't having it. Even if it's just for the sake of a fucking anecdote and for your own sort of intrinsic sort of values and wanting to do something. Just to say, I'm going to go down there. And it's like the Trump thing, Trump was another thing. Do you remember when they were outside of Town Hall protesting Trump when he got elected? And it's like, that's obviously not going to change anything. That's not,
Really? I thought they were going to scrap it and thought, right, we better fucking... Manchester's upset. The 12 pissed Mancunian students from the fucking Manchester Met drunk on the steps of the Town Hall. Call it a day. It's only downhill from here.
Donald, forget the results. Doesn't matter, mate. You know what? Give it to Hillary. Because, you know what I mean? There's at least 800 people outside Manchester Town Hall. You can forget those election results. But again, it's people wanting to show their displeasure or their the fact that they're against something. Sorry, James, I cut you off there, mate.
No, I was going to say, I think for smaller things, you're talking about students. I think for the was it the rent strike that they actually managed to successfully stop. So I think for smaller sort of local issues like that, it probably gets noticed more. But especially, it's really difficult. Things like Brexit as well. Look at how many people went on those marches. Look at the Iraq War was the biggest march thing since peacetime.
A million. I was part of that, and because nothing happened at the back of that, I really just gave up on protest because I didn't want it to be a case of me doing my bit that was ultimately going to end up in nothing, and that's why I've got to sort of just struggle with regarding what protests mean in the moment. And
it was 250,000 there.
Yeah, sorry, I'm exaggerating for
everyone. I always thought, how many was that? 250,000. I've always thought it was like 1 million people or something.
It might be bigger. I don't know, but I know it's the biggest one since peacetime.
Yeah.
Again, though, you know what though, Scotty, you're sat here now saying, I was part of that, and that's for me something to be proud of, because
it didn't make any fucking difference. I'm not proud of
it.
But
you saw something. I didn't agree with the Iraq War, but I didn't do fuck all about it. Do you know what I mean? But at least you tried. At least you did something. You know what I mean? I might have discussed it in a pub with a few friends and said this looks like a load of bollocks, but I didn't do anything. Do you know what I mean? And we're sitting here now, 17, 18 years later, all agreed that war was fucking illegal, a disaster, and responsible for countless, mainly Iraqi deaths. And yet, you did something. I know you're saying, it didn't make any fucking difference, but at least you tried. At least you did something. Do you know what I mean? And who knows, maybe it did. You don't, sometimes the thing with protests is sometimes they can just be a good example to people. They can sometimes, like young people or different generations can look at it. Because when I was younger, it was like, you looked at people like the miners' strikes, you looked at the poll tax riots. When I was a kid, the poll tax riots were a big thing. And it was like, these people aren't having it. And it sort of inspires you a little bit. So do you know what I mean? Sometimes it can just be that. It can just sort of lead you to think, do you know what? I'm not just going to, sulk about it. And plus, even 2003, you didn't have social media. I mean, now people can just fucking, they use social media as a protest, don't they? Whether it's boycotting companies, whether it's just spreading the word or whatever. But when you didn't have that, a lot of the time you had to take it to the streets, didn't you?
But then likewise, they can go wrong as well. Though. If you look at the Arab Spring in Egypt and how the Muslim Brotherhood basically sort of took over that and sort of basically made the entire thing about them, which kind of led to the whole thing sort of falling apart and getting hijacked.
Yeah. And that was the point I was going to make regarding protesting now. And I think that it can be so easily, whether it's anarchists or anyone who's like a far left movement that can sort of infiltrate the groups for their own measures. And so a lot of times with protests, and especially when it spins into riots, it can become a headless beast. And because you haven't got a focal leader, like you were talking, your Martin Luther King's, your Deguara, your Malcolm X at the forefront, it's hard to control. And you have all these sort of fractions that are doing so many different things. And I think that's where they become null and void, because they're all fighting and acting in different ways. And ultimately it becomes so chaotic that all the papers are going to do, like at the moment, all the papers are printing now is just that how is all the violence in Bristol. Nobody's talking about what they're actually protesting against. The violence becomes the story, not what they're actually protesting against. And I think that's the downfall of protesting.
It's like the statue thing. Do you remember in the summer where the focus wasn't actually on Black Lives Matter, but was about the fact that they were going to supposedly take down Churchill's statue and they were putting people to protect it?
Yeah.
That was so fucking weird, that, wasn't it? I remember seeing like pictures of like, I think it was somewhere like Plymouth with like about 50 casuals stood around a fucking monument. And it was like, old woman and like a child or whatever walking past, looking at him like, what the fuck are you? And they're like stood there like proper, like, like they're in the army on parade or whatever, like no one's touching this monument. And you're like, mate, no one's got to Plymouth, get a grip if you like. What the fuck are you on about?
Those areas like Plymouth that tend to have the lowest sort of levels of immigration tends to be the ones where they're actually scared the most about immigrants because they don't have the experience of it.
It's like
because they believe the newspapers, don't they?
Yeah, they actually thought like thousands of people were going to descend on Plymouth to fucking kick over the cenotaph, and it's like, what are you on about, mate? That's never going to happen. And then it was like, and at the end, it's like, I saw these social media posts. Yeah, we defended it, and no one, they knew not to come down here. They were never coming down here. What are you on about? And it's like when you saw like the videos or the footage of some of the BLM protesting that went across the UK, and it was like young kids and teenagers and students and people like, and I've seen them walking like through town centres and just people again stood outside monuments heckling them and shouting abuse. Do you know what I mean? I just thought, you're missing the point. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, it's ridiculous. It's like me going down with the cenotaph in Ireland and just standing outside it with no one there on my own saying, you know what I mean? Fucking anyone comes near this, they're getting it.
Yeah, but you did your bit. Yeah, but you will have done your bit, Jay. you'll have stood there and you'll have done your bit, and then in 20 years' time, someone may have turned around and gone like that really sort of, inspired me.
I would have had to heckle myself though, because I was quite supportive of Black Lives Matter, and my granddad was in the army, so I would have been like stood outside a cenotaph heckling myself.
Yeah,
like fucking like Fight Club.
It's weird how they all wear Stone Island, isn't it? All them
That's the thing. Yeah, I didn't have enough Stone Island for that. I've not owned a pair of Rockport for about 20 years as well, so I was fucked.
It's interestingly, it's all the people that didn't actually fight in the war that sort of use it as sort of propaganda, because the actual people that fought in the war see how it's really important to keep Britain and Europe together, but the people that were like for when it took over sort of used that against the whole Brexit thing, but the people that were actually involved realised the importance of not having another one.
No, you're right. That's often the way in it, and it's like, sometimes it goes back to that whole like we were saying, I think we were saying the other week, when you're watching England and you get like that no surrender to the Taliban from people who've just never fucking had, even thought about fighting the Taliban in their lives, and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about, mate? No surrender to the Taliban. You stood in Wembley Stadium surrounded by children. What are you on about? But yeah, sometimes you get a little element of that with these protests or these anti-protests, and it's just people who just sort of have gotten out better to do, looking for an issue where there isn't one, and it does get blown out of proportion. Yeah. But you make an interesting point about the Bristol thing, because I think I might, forgive me if I'm wrong, Scotty, but I think you talked about this at the time, where hadn't they tried to get that statue taken down legally, like through petitions and going to the council offices and legitimate raising the issue in front of the council, and just been ignored or backdoored or whatever, and then literally fucking rips it down and threw it in the canal or whatever.
Yeah, that was the case. Yeah, because I think the guy's name escapes me at the moment, but I think is it Colston? I think his name was Edward Colston, and because he had a theatre named after him and roads as well as the statues and stuff. Because as much as the slavery that he was involved in, a lot of people in Bristol also celebrated. It's not altruism, but he apparently did quite a lot of good as well. So it was the balance of that, and that was the argument. And they could never get it over the line for the petition to actually have these places renamed and stuff. But ultimately, they get pulled down, and that's I think that was by and large one of the trigger points for the changing of the policing bill as to where we are now. I just wanted to get your points of view on while we're talking about nationalists and stuff, is the flags where every government building now has got to have a Union Jack flying above it, and whether you care at all about it. I always get the same person sliding in my DMs on a weekly basis whenever I mention flag shaggers. So I'm going to leave it over to you two about this, because I really don't care. I think a flag is the most pointless piece of cloth, and now people will die and argue to death over big lines of cocaine over it in a dirty Wetherspoons pub. It's ridiculous. So what are your thoughts, Jake and James?
I try to have an opinion on everything and anything. You know me, Scotty, and I think you know me as well, James, well enough to know that I very rarely sit on the fence or don't care about something, but I'm just not bothered. And I think the only thing I'm bothered about is the ridiculousness of this argument when it comes to these flags. And I think it was was it Nana Machete off the BBC was getting stick for giggling at a joke about a flag. And then she liked a tweet and she had to apologise, which I think is so ridiculous for starters, about apologising for liking tweets. Don't get me fucking started on that, because we'll be here all day. It's just so wrong. And it's this sort of thing like the flag is the most sacred entity in the world, and you can't, joke about it or mock someone's flag. Or it's not even mocking a flag, just make a joke about the size of their flag, and then people are getting, sort of really angry and violent about it almost. And then it's like, all right, we're going to bring in this new legislation about flags on buildings. And I'm like, who gives a toss? It's like when they say the flag's at half-mast or whatever. I wouldn't fucking know, because I never noticed them. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, look, that flag's a bit lower than it normally is. Who cares? Do you know what I mean? It's really just seems so pointless. It really does. It just seems like a pointless argument. And I fear it's another pointless argument we're having to distract from the real issues that are going on in terms of COVID, in terms of the economy, things like that matter. Schools, when kids are back at school, and what's going on there and all that other stuff, and the money that's been wasted, and, jobs for the boys that we've had from the government. And yet we're being sort of sidetracked with this just absolutely ridiculous argument about it's a cloth on sticks.
But do you not think that James? Do you not think that the flags are trying to reinforce this Britain is great post-Brexit propaganda? When you look at how the flags were printed on the vials of fucking of the vaccine and shit, and then somebody put something on social media that I shared this week was Great British water that had been used in these ice cubes, and I was like, it does seem to be this level of nationalism seems to be escalating the more as more we've left the EU, and I'm just wondering whether you think that this new "we better fly the flags over every government building" is to try and be a not so subtle reinforcement of propaganda.
No, it's pathetic, really, and it's obvious why they're doing it to sort of make up for the fact that this Brexit deal is catastrophic, and the Conservative Party is supposed to be the party of business, but they're completely, taking it from under the carpet of a lot of businesses, and they're doing this by covering them and saying, well, we're fine because we're British, so we'll get through it, or whatever, this oven-ready deal that Boris Johnson supposedly had. It. I saw it's one of those typical Daily Mail stories that there was somewhere in Plymouth or somewhere down south, I think it was, they basically didn't get planning permission to put the Union Jack up somewhere. And the story got twisted into the fact that they weren't allowed to fly the flag or something stupid like that. And all these you see him on Twitter, it's like first name, last name, bunch of numbers, no profile pic, always with some really terrible opinion.
With a flag next to the name.
Do you know what though? Right, I've got to say this because he pulled me up on it last time. It's all right sometimes you have a flag on your Twitter back. Yeah. David Pritt, if you're listening or watching, brother, he's a good mate of ours and he's a good lad. And me and Scotty sort of went in quite hard on people with Union Jacks on their Twitter, and I think we sort of may have insinuated that it was a good way of knowing who's on the register. But that's not the case. David
he's
Pritt's
not a member
lad.
of the BNP.
Yeah, he's not a member of the BNP, and he said it was for British cycling, but he don't need to explain himself. But invariably,
but that just shows the sort of how the flag has been sort of taken over as being this thing, and we spoke about it before, me and you, Jay. The Union Jack, or not so much the Union Jack, but the St. George's flag. Whenever I see it when it comes to World Cup time, I just automatically think of fucking Danny Dyer and the EDL. Not that they're connected by any I just mean Danny Dyer's to the football hooligan or the football factory, and also the EDL, because it just seems to be, this is England and stuff. That's what it always sort of that's the images that have been painted under the name of that flag. And
Lonsdale Trainers.
Lonsdale Trainers, yeah.
Great shout, son. Yeah, Lonsdale Trainers.
Sports Direct, but direct back and fucking Lonsdale Trainers. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Knuckle Busters, I suppose, car park fights.
That actually brings us to another topic, because looking at a list here from the selected Home Office procurement card spending 2020, I see that £849.50 was spent at Sports Direct. Now, I'm obviously talking about Priti Patel and her spending habits that have been under scrutiny. And yeah, nearly 900 quid of it was at Sports Direct, which you have to ask yourself, what the fuck was she getting, or what were the Home Office getting from Sports Direct for nearly 900 quid?
How do you spend 800 quid at fucking...
Hey, how do you spend... Have you seen this list? I'll go through this list quickly.
No, I'm going to try and find it.
Yeah, there was 600... Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. There was 670 quid at Rachel's Kitchen that does Rachel's Cupcakes brand. So, in fact, I'll send you the link there. It's in the chat on the side thing. There was 864 quid at Hair There and Everywhere. This appears to be a hairdressing salon. This is from the article I'm reading. 30 grand on Global Beauty Products. The firm runs the store Beautiful Brows and Lashes, but also appears to sell PPE, obviously, because who else is going to do PPE other than a beauty salon? 2 grand on Neptune Quiterani, electronics store in Albania. £1 grand at Folkestone Garden Centre. Okay. 3,774 quid at Pollyanna Restaurant. Fucking hell. £919.81 at Entertainment EB. Whatever that is. Sounds a bit sus to me. 77 grand. In fact, let's give it its full total. £77,269.40 at SP Beautiful Brows. And that's another beauty product company. almost 4 grand at Pollyanna restaurant, 900 quid on a pub in Oxford, the Magdalene Arms, and 2,000 at Claudia Lamb Independent. Claudia Lamb is a diet consultant. I mean,
how? And this is just Priti Patel, yeah. I'm guessing.
Well, I think this was because there's been a bit of argument.
Is it home office expenses? Is it
strange home office expenses? Were this is like it's a report into the Home Office spending, boys. A lot of it's been sort of laid at her door because she's obviously Home Secretary. Obviously, the government are pushing back and saying this isn't all what you think it is. This isn't all just beauty products and stuff like that. Some of it's PPE, personal protection equipment. Some of it's, sort of spread out over a certain period of time amongst a lot of people. But it does seem, at best, excessive and at worst, corrupt. Oh. It just seems like, especially when everyone. Pond. Well, that's true. Yeah, it could have been a moat. Was it a moat? A duck? Was it the duck house?
Duck
do you remember
pond,
that one?
I think. Something like that.
Do you remember the expenses scandal? And some of the shit that went on. Do you know what it was for me with that, right? It wasn't the fact that like you had all these MPs who were just flagrantly wasting money on shite like floating duck pond houses and stuff like that. It was the ones where you had like people who were claiming like, who was the guy who he claimed like he's still in the government now? I forget his name. I think he might be Liam Fox, I think, who did like a 4p for 10 meters worth of fuel and filled out an expense form for that. Just shit like that. And you think, you're fucking out of order. Do you know what I mean? Like this was like the peak austerity time. Well, no, it wasn't austerity. It was before that, wasn't it? But it was still times, I think it was around the time of the global financial
It was a year after. So austerity was 2010.
No, it was before the first expensive scandal was when Labour was still in power. So it was, but it was around
2011 as well.
Yeah, so there was two. There was one under Gordon Brown, which is around the time of the financial crash. So people are feeling the pinch. And then, as you said, there's one in austerity as well, when you've just got all these politicians and MPs just claiming for absolute nonsense. And yeah, it does feel a little bit like that. But I think what sort of just annoys me about this is you look at it and you go, this is a joke, this is disgrace. But nothing will change, nothing will get done about it. And, we're still going to have to be footed with another bill in a few months' time for another 7,400 or whatever quid it was at bloody Beautiful Brows. No, sorry, 77,269 at Beautiful Brows.
I mean,
fucking hell, how beautiful do you want your brows?
Doesn't it reek of how out of touch the Home Office are with the average person in the street? Because if I had an expenses bank where I could go spending shitloads of money, I wouldn't be spending 900 quid at Sports Direct and expenses. And I have some experience at this. So I worked at an advertising agency. It was one of my very first jobs at the end of the 90s, early noughties. I'll not mention the name for fear of legal action. But they used to have this advertising company used to have one of the biggest courier companies in the world as their client. And every Christmas, they would go out on the biggest fucking bender. And remember the Fantasy Bar in Deansgate, mate? So they'd hire out the Fantasy Bar was a strip club, James. So they'd hire the Fantasy Bar out just for the staff, right? And it was all, everything. It was like buffet lunch and everything. You can have dances and all that for nothing. Whole evenings were sort of rinsed on this account. Now, why are MPs not doing this sort of thing? This is what the average person would do with a blanket. It's not all of them would go to a strip gaff, would they? But you go somewhere else except for getting Beautiful Brows and fucking and Sports Direct. If I had the opportunity, although my eyebrows probably do need some work.
They don't, lovely. Don't talk rubbish. Do you know what? I would have a lot more respect if it literally just said expenses, 50 grand, sniff, 40 grand.
What happened to them? What happened to the Tories when they used to fucking string themselves in cupboards, wanking to prostitutes and stuff? They were the glory days of politics. Do you know what I mean? Bring us back to them. They're the Tories you could get down with. They had a little level of empathy with them. All right, I'm not into belting me throat. Yeah.
It was on telly saying that I didn't take cocaine, trying to admit it. But it's like did you read the thing in the Sunday Times last week about the hereditary peers scandal that are basically in the House of Lords that they show up, don't say anything, and then get loads and loads of money just wasted on them and saying that it should be abolished because they just do fuck all.
I don't ever miss this actually. Did I say the 5,415 quid at Primark? I mean, how?
You could buy it at Primark.
Yeah, you could buy 40% stake in the company for fucking $5,000. I mean, that's impressive. But again, they're like, oh well, this was for clothing and equipment for refugees or something. I don't know. They just spin it anyway. They want, don't they? And it'll be in the news for a bit and then it'll die down. I mean, Priti Patel is fucking Teflon. Anyway, the amount of shit she's done and got away with in her career. Do you know what I mean? It's just it's amazing that she's not only still an MP, but actually still, one of the most powerful people in the country. I mean, it just doesn't seem like anything can touch her. And I certainly don't think a $5,000 bill from Primark's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think she'll be going for some time yet because she's obviously, well in with Boris Johnson and the rest of them who highly rate her. And despite the fact she's absolutely evil, in my opinion, and useless, she's just doesn't seem to be able to do any wrong in their eyes.
Yeah, I've got a mate, and he gets away with absolute murder with his missus, and it always intrigued me how he did it. And I'll not mention his name for fear of him kicking my ass if him or his missus ever hears this show. But he said that the first sort of 6 weeks, 7 weeks of them going out of each other, he went on a bender for like 6-7 days and didn't phone or anything like that. And then afterwards, he said to me, he goes, what I've done there is I've laid it all out. He goes, if that's the worst I can do, go missing by 7 days, she'll always say that if it's not as bad as that, so that's as bad as it can be, and then anything else isn't as bad, and that's pretty much the Priti Patel syndrome. It isn't as bad as sort of bullying your staff members or wanting to send fucking migrants to the arse end of Africa whilst they go through application for asylum.
What was it she did under May? She got sacked under May, didn't she, for meeting with Israeli ministers without permission or something? And then, like I say, she, come back, bullies her staff, wants to send. She was a big advocate for the death penalty for years, wasn't she?
It just shows the failed media and the failed incompetence of this entire cabinet when the person that is investigative into the bullying inquiry has to resign because she doesn't get sacked, and there's just no accountability for anything.
It's weird because the Home Office official Twitter account did a tweet. I think I'm trying to find it. It was like the other day.
Lying, incompetent bastards. Imagine having to work with these people or something like that.
Yeah, there was that one. But more recently, they did fact check, right? This is what they put up. Fact check. I'm going to start tweeting this. Fact check. Jay's the fucking greatest footballer that's ever lived. It's a fact. Fact check. It is wrong to claim the Home Office expenses that have been circulated today, the Home Secretaries. They are department-wide and for vital equipment like PPE. It is completely false to say the Home Office has spent money on beauty products. It was PPE. We make no apology for buying PPE to keep our staff safe during the pandemic. The spending in Primark was for asylum seekers who would not have had appropriate clothing when arriving in the UK, and then it's just some other guff. But fact check, it's not, is it? That's just, you're just making up more shit. Do you know what I mean? Just because you put fact check at the beginning of it doesn't make it so. You can't fact check yourself. That's not how it works. The
Tories changed their Twitter account to Fact Check UK.
Yeah, do you remember that?
Oh, that's pathetic.
Yeah. Jesus, they're just so fucking disingenuous. They get away with murder. And like you were saying, James, me and Scotty have spoken about this almost constantly on this podcast. I'm glad you're on the same page. The media have got to take some more, accountability. They've got to be holding these people to account and just saying, hang on a minute, what's going on? Why are we not going through these expenses? Why are we not questioning this? Why are we not sort of making a big song and dance about it? And also Keir Starmer as well, because half the time Labour just seem completely either unwilling or unable to get anywhere and to push back on any of these things that the government are accused of or the government have done, to the point where it almost feels like at times Labour are in cahoots with them. You look at the sort of the Matt Hancock illegal breaking the law when it came to the contracts thing, and Keir Starmer goes on the telly and says he shouldn't resign. I mean, it just baffles me at the minute what is going on in this country and the way that this Tory government just seems to be able to operate completely unhindered by either the press or the so-called opposition.
I think the Sunday papers are doing a good job, though, to be fair. The Observer, the Sunday Times, they often are the ones with the lead investigative stories, but if they're not being picked up, because not everyone reads a Sunday paper by other members of the press, if most of the press are, I've never thought this is democratic at all when you've got pretty much all of the main tabloids supporting the same party. That's not fair democracy, is it? Most of them are owned by the same person as well.
No, I've been listening to a few podcasts this weekend with Hugh Grant, because quite interesting with the Levinson inquiry, and he was saying that the idea he was trying to talk about British politics to an American host who's doing the podcast, and he was saying, what's it like over there? He goes, most people think that we have a democracy in England, but it's not. It's an oligarch that's run by the people who own the newspapers, the likes of the Murdoch. You'll have to fill me in with the rest. Yeah, the Barclay brothers and stuff. And he goes, it's whatever they want, or whatever political party sort of towing the line for their interests is the way that the country will vote, and that's pretty much the case.
Because Murdoch doesn't get any profit on these on the Sun, especially. It's only because realistically, newspapers now, the only reason that Murdoch still prints the Sun and several others is because he knows the power that he can use them for in terms of to get whoever he wants into power. They're not making him loads of profit.
It's a shame, innit? Because when was it when we had a hung parliament? Was it 2016 or 2017? And the press up.
It was the May election.
Yeah, the May and Corbyn one, because they went after Corbyn, didn't they?
2017, because Brexit was 2016. So
sorry, yeah, 2016. Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Because she thought she was going to wipe out Labour, and to be honest with you, so did I at the time. But it looked then like, because Corbyn, was relentlessly hammered by the likes of the Sun and the Mail, just constant everyday front page, and it was on Parliament. You thought, are their powers waning a little bit? Because in the past you'd have thought if they'd have gone after someone like that and backed the other candidate like they did with Blair, it would have been a landslide. Even with Cameron to a certain degree. I know there was still, it still had to be a coalition, but you look at the swing, the votes they swung. There's no doubt the Sun and other newspapers had a big hand in that. And you thought, hang on a minute, maybe they've not got that power that they had a few years ago. Maybe social media and things like that are taking over. But I think that was a bit of a false dawn, really.
Neil Kinnock as well.
Neil Kinnock with the whole lights out thing. Yeah,
that's
a great point. That really did just tilt it to major, didn't it?
Yeah.
It looked like the Tories. You mentioned there, Scotty, about him being in, with in cupboards with prostitutes and things like that. I mean, major. There was all sorts of scandals going on with the Tories, weren't there, around that time? And everyone thought, this is going to.
But that just shows the power that doesn't happen if Tony Blair doesn't go to Australia and agrees to certain things with Rupert Murdoch. That doesn't happen. That them sort of, because if you watch the Murdoch dynasty, I think you've seen, aren't you, Jay? That was on the BBC iPlayer.
A few years ago, was it?
It was last year. Last year.
Sorry. Yeah.
It was sort of showing the things that the power that Murdoch had when they were trying to get Tony Blair in charge, and I think the head person of the Sun, the editor at the time, I think he actually ended up serving time for something, but he wasn't going in hard enough on the Tories, and Murdoch actually got on the phone and came downstairs to his office and said, "No, when I say we're going after these, we're going after them," and that just shows the sort of strength. And my fear now is that when you were saying that we a few years ago, it might have looked like we were changing this. If you look at like GB News, that's going to be coming up later on. You know what I mean? Yeah. As much as we're all against it, it will find an audience, and that's not the audience necessarily.
It's got loads of money as well. That's the scary thing. Like Simon McCoy, who's a pretty respected BBC journalist, he joined last week. You've got Dan Wootton, executive editor of the
Andrew Neil. Andrew Neil, who's, I mean, I'm probably going to lose a lot of respect from you guys now, but I don't actually mind Andrew Neil too much. I know he can be a bit divisive and a bit of a dickhead, if I'm being honest. But in certain interviews in the past, even when he's interviewed Tories, he's gone after him, and I think he's been a pretty good interviewer. But over the last sort of year or so, especially since he's got his GB News gig, even more so than normal, you just see him shifting to the right, and you see him getting more and more just inflammatory. And he was at it again today, I think, when he called. Who was it? He said was a Labour MP and she wasn't, and then rather than correct himself, he argues a toss. So you can see the way he's going. Dan Wootton, I've got absolutely zero time for him. I don't even class him as a journalist. He's just a sensationalist fucking idiot who, just bullies people, and especially women and stuff. He's just a horrible, horrible person. You've got him there. It's only a matter of time before Lawrence Fox or someone's fucking joining him, or that other idiot. What's his name? Darren Grimes. This is just going to be an absolute sort of Aldi version of Fox News, and I'm dreading it. I am, and you're right, Scotty. There will be an audience. There's fucking guaranteed to be an audience, and this won't be news. It'll be an opinion network, an opinion-based network masquerading as a news channel. So you'll have people with misinformation thinking that is the truth.
Yeah.
So when they go on there and they say shite like, immigration's through the roof, Muslims want to kill us all, fucking, homosexuality is getting taught in nurseries. and it's all a load of bollocks, you'll get people going, well, this is where we're at now. Oh, wokeism's taking over. And it's just going to cause more and more grief. You know, you've seen it in America with Fox News, the sort of shit they get away with. I mean, you know, they're classed as a respected news channel, a news network. Do you know what I mean? And it's like they literally just have opinion pieces and pretend that that's news. It's ridiculous.
The main thing I had with Andrew Neil, though, the issue, the hypocrisy was that he presented his show, Daily Politics, whilst being editor of The Spectator. But James O'Brien, who did Newsnight, had to give that up because of
you're right. Listen, I'm not, I mean, when I say like, I sort of had a soft spot's not the right term. There was I could watch Andrew Neil. I could watch Andrew Neil interviews. I could. And I thought in the election we spoke about, I thought he did a very good job in interviewing certain MPs. And he wasn't like, oh, this is a Tory, I'll go dead easy on him. He was going in hard on whoever it was, left or right. And obviously he's more right wing. But over the last sort of 2 years, whatever, he's just shifted. I think we've seen a massive shift in a lot of the mainstream media. And all these people, the Piers Morgans or whoever are going to find a home there. And it's just going to be another Fox News. And it's interesting what you were saying, Scott, as well about Murdoch and the Sun and making that deal with Blair. To a lesser degree, there was a little bit. I don't know if you've seen it. I watched something the other week. It's called The Loudest Voice, and it's about Roger Ailes, who ran Fox News. And it's Russell Crowe plays him.
Is it the three women and the sexual?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So Russell Crowe plays him, and there's a sort of bit in there where. Because I think it was Rupert Murdoch's fourth wife. He's had loads of wives. I think he's married to Jerry Hall now, or he might be moved on from there. One of his wife, she was a little bit more liberal and was friends with like some of the Obamas and that sort of thing. So they started going a little bit easier on Barack Obama when he became president or when he was a candidate, because they had like a few meetings and it was like, they were obviously still conservative and still went after him, but little things like they used to call him Barack Hussein Obama on air and stopped doing that because like they had an agreement like just call him Barack Obama because obviously you know why they were calling him Hussein. Just little things like that. Nothing too major. But again, it was like, we'll do a little bit of a deal. Do you know what I mean? So there's always deals to be made. But this is just, Murdoch or GB News, it's just going to be awful. And the fact that, like you said as well, Simon McCoy's gone on there, that's really deflating because he's someone who is quite likable. He's got that sort of sardonic wit, which isn't easy to put across when you're reading the news, but he manages to do it. And you can just see him going there and just becoming another fucking right-wing cyborg for this absolute
there's a lot of people like
horror show of a station.
It's because they pay good money probably as well, because a lot of LBC people, which is quite they changed a lot before. It probably used to be the radio station for like racist taxi drivers, but now you've got James O'Brien on there, you've got Shayla Fogarty, you've got Eddie Mayer as well. It's actually, they've got quite a good balance on there, but he's still obviously opinionated because that's kind of how it is, but quite a few of their sort of producers and backroom staff have moved over there. But I think they're just going after loads of people, because if you go on their website, there's loads and loads of job sort of things going.
Would you do it? If they offered you, James or Scotty, if they said, massive money, come and work for us on GB News, would you take that? Would you take that money? This isn't legally binding. This, by the way, you know what I mean.
I don't know. I don't know. I've got a family to provide for and stuff. So I don't know. I'd like to think that I'd go in with some sort of Machiavellian idea that I'm going to go in and then I'll just infiltrate the bastards and then I'll expose them all and catch Andrew Neil knocking one out or something like that underneath the desk. It's always about wanking with me. And or something, do you know what I mean? And then I'd like to think that, but then I'd probably get used to the money and then realise that, I found some far right views that I didn't know I had. And then just like, it becomes a cult, doesn't it? I think sensationalism and like far right opinion, extreme opinions, they carry more financial value, don't they? I think because them sort of opinions will get more clicks. That's more interesting for the advertisers, and advertisers aren't scrupulous, are they? They don't have morals to regard. No, I'm not going to be bothered about fucking putting my gambling ad on something that's against immigrants getting into fucking England if it's got 5 million clickbait. I'm not asked. So, but I think people with morals and stuff, it's harder to get that sort of view across and that opinion. So we have nothing against Murdoch by like it's a similar sort of size, and we're not going to have anything like GB News. It's probably the BBC is probably the closest thing to it. But I'm dancing around it. I probably would take it, but I'd ask for a shitload of money and explain my reasons quite well on social media. I'm sorry, but I went for the money.
Got the money, man. Got kids to feed. What about you, James?
I do Matt Allwright, you know, the consumer goods champion, the hero that we don't deserve, and go in there with like a hidden camera and expose them all and get sued the fuck out of.
That's what I wanted Solskjaer to do at United, you know.
He's brilliant, right? And I'm really pissed off that Watchdog has been destroyed now. It's just part of the one show, like 10 minutes every Wednesday. But he's had piss thrown at him. He's had people slam car doors in his face. He doesn't care.
Is he the guy? Did he do the one in Manchester with the fake modelling agency?
Might have been. He goes after like, you know, the really dodgy people that do like satellite installations and then run off, or like cowboy builders, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think if it's the same guy, there was like in Ancoats in Manchester. There's like these
traders.
There's like these fake modelling agencies for like kids and stuff. So they con like mums and stuff, and it's like, oh, if you pay this, we'll get your kid a catalogue job and we'll do this. And it's just some sort of sham. And it's like you pay like a deposit and then they're meant to get you to like get you, you know, gigs or auditions and stuff. And it was just a con. But he was like camped out outside their offices for like 2 days or something. And they were like inside, locked inside, having to order pizzas because he couldn't leave because he wouldn't leave, he wouldn't move. And they were like, in the end, they had to leave the premises to go home because he just fucking wasn't going anywhere. Do you know what I mean? He was like, literally went from like daylight to dark to daylight to dark, and he was sort of like there in the same clothes, like, I'm not going anywhere, sort of thing. I've been sleeping on the step, and they're like, in the end, they came out, they're like, oh, we're sorry. I thought he was fucking brilliant.
Can I say, right, because a lot of people give ITV News a lot of bad stick, but on Wednesday, because it was a year of lockdowns in the Northwest, Granada Reports and Northwest Tonight were both absolutely brilliant, especially with Northwest Tonight did a great thing. They were live from a church, I think, and Roger Johnson, who of course is brilliant. He had like candles to represent all the people that had died in the Northwest for like each different region. And then Granada Reports before were doing like a big OB from the Velodrome Centre where the vaccine rollout was being mainly done in Manchester. And I think it's important that people sort of look more to the good people, the good journalists that are doing their jobs properly.
Oh, thanks a lot, James. I'll take some credit for that. Thank you very much.
I know what you mean. Because
it works both ways because I got you the They Bleed Red, White and Black in the next United We Stand. So we help each other out.
Oh, was that you? Yeah, that put me through.
Oh, you on it, Scotty?
Right, so Andy, this is how it works. Andy sent me an email saying, do you want to do it? And I said, look, I've only seen United in 3 countries. Ask our kid instead. But I'm doing it the month after, so.
Do you know what's funny, that? Because he sent me, he said, I'll send it you when I did it. He said, I'll send you the magazine, right? And this was like a few months ago. And I never got it. And I thought, I was going to message him and I thought, I'm not asked. Like, I think you'd send me a picture of it anyway. I knew what I fucking said. I'd only wanted to see if it changed anything, like, especially when I'd, you know, been sort of quite critical of the Glazers and stuff, which he didn't, obviously. And then we were going through I was looking for an old bill the other day, and like I have a pile of letters and stuff that misses just when the letter comes from me, she just sticks it in a basket. And then I found this old United We Stand with like, with they bleed red, white, and black. And I was like, fucking hell, I didn't even know he'd sent it to me. So yeah, that'll be all of us, James. You should get on it, mate, because
I have. That's what I mean.
Yeah, like,
after Dave, it's me.
Yeah, only right, man. Fucking hell. I was talking about you the other day on the channel when like someone came up to you at Wolves who didn't like fan channels and was like, "Where were you?"
That 3 times now. You've said it's your favourite anecdote. That you've said that.
I love it though because it just sums up the insanity that you've got a fucking 17-year-old or whatever you were at Wolves away.
15, I think I was.
15. Who's getting shit because where were you 5 years ago or whatever? I was fucking 10, mate. Do you know what I mean? How many times have you got a Molyneux when you were 10 years old? Fucking get a grip. So yeah, it is one of my favourite anecdotes. I tell it all the time. I'll have to get
anyway, back to Granada Reports.
Yeah, no, you know what? I have this with a lot of people because I used to work with quite a lot of journalists who've gone on to bigger and better things, like Granada Reports and things. Well, I know them from bumping into them and stuff and some of the work they've done. And there are a lot of good journalists out there. And, it's saddened when you go, journalism in this country, and I've been guilty of saying this sort of thing, journalism in this country's gone to the dogs. Because there's a lot of journalists out there who put in massive amounts of work, have a lot of integrity, give a shit, do you know what I mean? And they're trying to just, highlight issues and people that need help. So, it's only right that we do highlight the good things as well as the ones that are questionable. Because especially at local level, there's a lot of top drawer journalists there, as I'm sure we all know and we're all aware of.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about that the other week when Piers Morgan did his little stormed off, and I was saying I've got mates at ITV in Granada that were sort of sick to the teeth of him and hate that because he represents the station on a national brand, that to the average person that they see just the brand, and if you work for ITV, then you're in bed with fucking Piers Morgan. And I get it quite a lot the same with the BBC and stuff like that. Like people don't look at it as a local level. They'll be pissed off at someone on Newsnight, and then just see the whole BBC, and that just takes up their impression of what the BBC is and stuff. But yeah, good point actually you make, James.
I think ITV News is very different though to the Good Morning Britain, because you don't see many of the people that are on ITV News on Good Morning Britain as well. I think they're quite separate sort of organisations.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's it's like you saying about LBC there. I've got a friend who I used to work with, and she was a reporter at Key with me. Well, she's a newsreader, sorry, and then she's gone on to LBC. And then I remember she got in touch with me and she's like, because I do stuff for them now and again when they want a United fan.
Oh yeah.
And at first I had that thing in my head. This is the channel of Katie Hopkins and Nigel Farage.
LBC.
Yeah.
I thought that's just like speech politics though.
No, they have. I've been on there a few times. They do like on a Friday night, I think it is. They have like one show where they go over football for like 20 minutes. Yeah, honestly. So like Rachel, the girl I used to work with, she was like messaging me, "Will you come on?" And I was like, "Fucking hell, LBC." It's like this is like Katie Hopkins tackle, and then like you saying, and I was like, "But I'm gonna make James O'Brien's on there, and there's a couple of others who are on there," and I think it has shifted slightly. So yeah, you're always gonna get good journalists and good people, no matter what organisation it is. Even if that is David Scott at GB News in the future, we'll have to, we'll always remember him.
We've all got across the bear. Andrew Neil.
Yeah, if you are watching, Andy.
Yeah. Oh man, James, you wanted to quickly talk about the article that you sent across earlier on regarding fans and tickets and stadiums.
Yeah, I was just going to say it sort of sums up the government's incompetence, that the way they're going to go about testing fans into these stadiums is not actually to do the home testing kits that everyone else has done in terms of school children. It's to actually get them to go to testing centres, which is just going to completely overwhelm the NHS.
It's just a fast. Seriously, when do you think, either of you, that we're going to be back in stadiums properly?
Well, I'm very lucky. I've already been to 2 football games this season through work.
What were they like, the games? Was it normal capacity?
So
or was it?
It was no fans. So first game I went to, Barry Town versus TNS, Wales' 2 most successful domestic clubs. It was shit. Yeah, I think it was just really flat. It's just really strange. It just feels like you're watching like a training game. And then the Welsh league system below the Cymru Premier, which is the top flight, they've pretty much played their season, bar a couple of sort of stoppages, which has kind of not been great. But below that, the Cymru North and the Cymru South, which are the regional leagues that sort of go up to it, their season hasn't started yet. So the team that I went to see in February, cycled Taffs Well, went to see them play Cardiff's reserve side in a cup competition. That was their first game since last March, and their season was supposed to get underway the next week, but it got cancelled again. So they've played 1 match since like the whole of the season started. So, but that was at university campus actually, and it was possibly the biggest shithole I've ever been to. It was in a place called Treforest Estate, and there's absolutely nothing there, and the train station was dreadful, absolutely dreadful.
Fucking hell. This is what I mean. It's like
Friday night as well.
Friday night, eh? What better way to spend your Friday night than in what was it called?
Treforest Estate.
Treforest Estate. It's a place to be on a Friday night. Sounds delightful. No, what do you reckon, Scotty? When do you reckon we're going to be?
I don't know. Well, they still think that we're going to be going to. Well, we're not going to be going to fucking Wembley because Solskjaer shit with the lineup against Leicester. But that's another story. But they still think that we can go to where that fans will be going to Wembley for the final, don't they? That's still on the cards. Is that? And that's
is it going to be? And this
I don't think it's before. I don't think it'll be full capacity.
You jumped in there before I asked the most stupid question. So it's going to be like 30,000 or something.
Yeah, and I think that'll be the case at Old Trafford. From the beginning of the season, I think we'll see like there'll be people in there, but not too sure if it'll be full capacity. Well, that's fucking bonkers. That system that James is saying. So you're expecting, and once you've gone, have you got to have a pass that you've been tested, James, before you're allowed into the venue?
I'll read it out. So it says here that here we go. So, plans to get sports fans back in stadiums and music fans back at festivals this summer will fail because the government is insisting they go to NHS testing centres for a COVID test rather than use a home test like school children. It's going to overload the NHS, and what's being proposed can't achieve that. And a system that involves using already an overstretched NHS resources to test a few hundred fans here and there just won't do, and it has failure written all over it.
Can you just imagine that, where you phone up the lads and like, what time are you meeting down at the toll gate before the United game? Just going to call at the NHS, or not going to that hospital. The queue was mad at MRI. I'm going to fucking Salford Hospital instead. Oh no, it's fucking shit. Don't get on. Can you? It's not going to happen. No way on this fucking planet is it going to happen.
It sounds deeply flawed at best, to say the least. It's just,
but we're all going to be vaccinated by then anyway, aren't we? Apparently.
Have you had the vaccine?
No, not yet. Well, apparently we're getting it in April, aren't we?
I've had it. I've had the first one. I had the first one. I've got to wait for the second.
Right, but, shows your third arm.
Yeah. my piss is fluorescent now.
Was that Bill Gates trying to get in your house before?
Yeah. Dying to know what I've been up to. Especially because I'm so secretive on social media as well.
You'll have this pump fucking around your house.
Well, yeah.
Microchip you've got in your teeth there. See.
Yeah, this is it, mate. This is it. I'm getting tracked now. But I've got like, me and my mate went there because he had an appointment there as well. I met him down there. And we're both laughing because there's a few people on our respective social media Facebooks who were saying, I'm not having a vaccine. You don't know what's in it. And like, these are people we know used to stick all sorts up their nose on a regular basis without fucking checking what it was. And now all of a sudden they think that Bill Gates is tracking him with this magical fucking vaccine. And it's like, come on, have a day off.
That is ridiculously on the head there, because pretty much everybody I know who's a bad sniffhead from Leamington alongside growing up is completely against the vaccine, and I knew the dealers that they were getting their drugs off, and that wasn't 100% pure shit. They were putting Daz Ultra up the fucking snout.
I've seen people find bags of shit on the floor and sniff it, and now they're questioning what the NHS are giving them. Like, fuck off. Seriously.
Smoking like that. Oh, I'm not fucking.
Yeah, I'm talking up, mate. Fucking up.
I ain't fucking shit in my body.
Mate. Oh. Are you mad?
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Okay then, Professor. Go on, sorry, James, what are you saying?
There's so people that eat food off the floor as well.
Mate,
terrible.
Well, I just stick to the what is it? The 5 minute rule?
5 second rule.
5 minutes. Oh, fucking hell.
Fucking hell, and you're quick in Wales, aren't you? Jesus
Christ. Unless there's things growing on it, it's all right. Don't worry about it.
We're famously ahead of everyone else in Wales.
Yeah, famously, yeah.
Anyway,
we'll
we'll wrap up. Did you mention something else before we go, Jake?
No. What's on the agenda coming up this week?
Well, I don't know, but I've just been looking on social media, on Twitter, and trending is Jill Dando and Jimmy Savile. I'm not too sure what's happened there, but I said blast from the past. I'll check that out afterwards.
Maybe it's transpired that Jimmy Savile is actually guilty of Jill Dando's assassination.
Oh, both dead, so.
Ooh.
Yeah, but he died after her, didn't he?
Mm.
Well, for your theory to work, for your theory to work, you would have to, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Have you been watching Line of Duty? I know it's.
I was just watching.
Didn't you think the storyline in the first episode? I'm not seeing the second one. Had shades of Barry George, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, that's probably why the Jill Dando things on social media.
Right, yeah, because it felt very much like they arrested the local nutter sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then it was all a bit like, oh well, did he actually do it? So yeah, so that's good point. That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
Did you see the thing on the gangs in Manchester during the week on BBC Two? That was good.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's
like high school reunion, or the kids at my high school reunion on there. That Darren Berkeley's son was on there. So yeah, brutal, wasn't it, mate?
Yeah, but it's not surprising, does it? Because it's all the people that have came down from the Berkeleys and all the sort of Moss Side, Donchester era.
Yeah, it was a lot of the kids and all that. I mean, but the thing that does my head in, because I grew up in that area, was how they always sensationalize it as though that's the focal point, as though you can't walk around the streets of fucking of Leversham or Longsight and stuff because you've got all this sort of stuff coming on, and there are bastards and stuff, but they're very much sort of they're sticking within the crime usually caused within that sort of community within a community, and I hate the way it sort of like stereotypes the whole area, and that happened in the 80s and the 90s when I grew up through most of it. So I grew up when all the Longsight gangs were running things, and it was depressing to see that it's still happening. But the question the BBC documentaries should be, why is it still happening? Not fucking putting this, oh, look at this is brutal. No, well, why isn't it being policed? Why are you not sorting out the social reasons why these gangs thrive in South Manchester? Why is that never the question?
But did you see that BBC Three series? It was Britain's Forgotten Men, where they followed they went around like Gorton and sort of all like the really sort of run down areas in Manchester, and they sort of followed people around like the sort of city fan that lived in a terraced house that was complaining because the Pakistani bloke next door got free Sky channels and he didn't, and that sort of thing.
No, but I'm definitely I'm gonna go and watch that now. What's it called? Britain's
Forgotten Men. It was a BBC Three YouTube series.
Right.
I should check that out, man. I'll have to check that gang thing out that you're talking about. Was it like South Manchester? Was it sort of thing?
Yeah. It was really good. Yeah. It's really good. It's on there now. But anyway, I've been Scotty, Motty, Youngy. Subscribe, like, follow, share, tell your mates. We'll be back very soon, hopefully talking. Is it International Week till next weekend?
God, is it? Fucking hell.
I'll tell you what, James will set you a brief.
All right.
You can convince us about your favourite year, because you've not done that yet, have you, James? About
that's a good shout. That's a good shout. That
you can do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go another week of being booked on various different phonies to defend the San Marino national team. That was my last week.
You know,
is that what you're doing?
Gaz going for the we got to play San Marino for, mate. We shouldn't play them to shit.
Oh, you're on. Yeah, I was on after. I was on after that show. Yeah, fucking defending San Marino.
I'm amazed they still have you on. Right, I'm glad they do. But like the amount of times when you've said something, I've gone,
it's not sovereign wealth. We can't use that word.
Yeah. I remember Natalie Pike losing it with you last time. And I was like, oh, God, this will be the end. Last time he's on for a while and they get you on again a week later because you're very good box office. Okay,
then what phrase do you want me to use? Blood money, state ownership?
I thought you were very, the way you worded it was very PG, to be fair. When he was talking about, people probably thinking, what the fuck are we on about? If you don't know, James was on Talking Balls, a BBC show, and he's on quite a lot as a United fan. Regular caller. And he was talking about.
Crucially, they asked me to come on. I'm not a sad person that plays up the radio.
he lets up a flare from fucking North Wales.
I hate it all because whenever they have me on, and I always end up in this conversation. There's probably my own doing about the Glazers, and because it's like it's family in it, so I'm like, you have to moderate your language that you use. So you just like, I'm like, there aren't a bunch of parasitic muppets or whatever. You just want to say they're just a shower of twats. So yeah, on that bombshell, we'll be back then with James's favourite year this week. We'll be back, and as always, thanks James, thanks Scotty. I've been Jay. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe.